subscriptions aren't just for software or streaming companies anymore. In this episode, I sit down with Boris Romero from Philips, who has been leading the shift from selling personal health products like shavers and toothbrushes to offering them as a service. We explore why consumers value subscriptions, the surprises Philips uncovered about trust and circularity, and how these lessons translate from B2C to B2B. If you're curious about what it really takes to make product as a service work, this conversation is packed with insights just for you. This podcast is powered by P2S Management Consulting, the team helping manufacturers shift from one-time product sales to recurring revenue models. At P2S, we partner with industrial companies to design and launch product as a service, subscription, and pay-per-use offers, tackling pricing, financing, legal structuring, sales enablement, and everything else needed to make recurring models work. Very nice to have you on the podcast, Boris. Boris Romero from Philips. Perhaps could you start by introducing yourself and telling us about your role leading new business ventures at Philips?
Yes, I have been working on the transition from selling products in the standard one-off payment towards providing them as a service. I've been leading those efforts within the personal health or personal care domain for the last probably 5 years, something like that. And it has been quite a journey. It definitely is a transformation. I think that's the right definition of the process from every angle: consumer, organization, market adoption, so on. A very exciting topic. I enjoy it. And yeah, that's what I've done for the last few years.
Great to have you here. Will be plenty of interesting insights, I think, for the listeners. So perhaps before we get into consumer behavior and all the surprises that you're going to share, let's anchor the conversation in what Philips is actually offering in terms of subscription. So what is the Philips subscription models? What products are included in it today?
So we operate within the non-medical part. So medical is everything that goes into hospital. And then we have the consumer goods part. And in there, we have three main business units. One is related to grooming and beauty, personal care. The other one is oral health care. And the third one is mother and child care. And within each one of these business units, we are offering a variety of models when it comes to product as a service. The most common one is a model that allows people to test the product, the hardware, over a period of time, and they can decide whether to keep the model in the subscription, to buy it outright for the remaining payment, or to cancel. And some of those propositions, they also have the component of the recurrent replaceable or replenishable components. So if you think of course, toothbrushes, you have the brush heads, and in the case of some grooming devices, you have the replaceable blades. Altogether, we operate within these three units.
Okay, that's very interesting. And how should I imagine this? If I'm a subscriber, I get this delivered every month. How do you know whenever I need to kind of change my the head of the toothbrush, for instance?
Excellent question indeed. So for the propositions that are bundled between let's call it a handle and a replenishable part, we now have connected propositions which proactively let the consumer know when is the right time to exchange this component, normally being done throughout the app. And then there are triggers, and depending on the usage pattern, some people are more intense users than others, but normally through the connectivity of the devices, we can communicate when is the right time. And then it's up to consumers to choose the frequency in which they want these replenishments to be sent out.
Okay, very interesting. So taking away also the hassle to kind of going perhaps to the supermarket or another store, because I guess they get delivered at home.
Correct. Convenience. There are different drivers behind each model. So when we look at the replenishment, is the convenience of making sure that you will never run out of the replaceable parts. And it's slightly different in the case of the product as a service that is only about the device itself. No, we call it towards the consumer, the try and buy model. And in there, it is less about convenience because it's only one delivery at the beginning. Yes, there are some connected services associated with it, but it's mostly about having access to the product to experience firsthand if it is what they're expecting. So different drivers for different models.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, you have subscriptions for, let's say, the bigger physical product, the main physical product. Then there's a subscription for the replacement, for, let's say, the spare parts, if we can call them like that. And then there's some connectivity or software related components to this as well, but they are part of, I guess, the main product subscription.
Correct. Absolutely the case. Yeah.
Okay.
That's how it works.
Okay, great. And was there a specific consumer need or barrier which drove Philips to test and launch subscription models?
Yeah. So we follow a very pragmatic approach. A few years back, penetration of one particular consumer offer was very low because of the innovation, high innovation or disruptiveness of the innovation. And that was the intense pulsating light, IPL, which is a device to control the growth of hair, female hair mostly. So the device was very good at tackling the tensions, the barriers. But back then we had very low penetration rate. So we went in to investigate what were the barriers. What we found was because there are some eligibility criteria regarding the color of the skin and the hair, plus question marks from the target audience about how easy is it to use, even about is it a little bit painful, is it safe, a new technology that for people coming from a very low tech solution like disposable razor blades, this was too much to handle. So we set out to explore options to allow people to try the device, to test it for themselves. And based on the first-hand experience of, yeah, it is removing those barriers or not, let's see if that will turn around the barriers for increasing it. And indeed, that was the case. So we started very small with one very concrete business application or case study. And from there, we just grew out gradually on the hypothesis that needed to be validated.
Okay, great. So it's a more, if I may say, a more complex product which you launched on the market, and you saw subscriptions as a way to customers to facilitate, to lower the barrier to entry of adoption, basically for consumers.
Correct. And along the way, we've learned many things on what type of proposition technologies have a better match with the model. And what we learned, for instance, is technology. When we launch a new radical technology, there are many barriers. So if you have a product that has a different way to tackle the main tension, that is a good candidate for the model. You also have the eligibility. Sometimes people might think, yeah, it looks good on paper, but is it for me? Will I get used to it? Can I live with it in a day-to-day basis? That's another good cross-check on compatibility of the model. And lastly is the affordability question. When we look at the reasons why people choose the subscription, the main reason is the ability to test, the flexibility, and in the third place comes the affordability. So these are a high level, good points to check on what are the right candidates for this model. We tested different categories, different price points, collect many learnings, and we have been refining the offer throughout the years.
Okay, that sounds great. It sounds like a very customer market driven approach. I guess one of the big advantages of subscription models is that you have way more touch points in the end with your subscribers, with your customers, and so you collect more information, more data about what they like, what they don't like, and basically co-design it together with you, which brings us to a topic of consumer behavior, right? But more diving into the consumer side, what people value, what surprised you, and how they react to this model. What do consumers actually value most about subscriptions? You mentioned the price point, you mentioned convenience, flexibility, hygiene is for sure another big concern that I might have in my head. So how did you manage this on Philips' side? What are the main drivers and barriers also from the customer side? Are you leading your company's shift from selling products to delivering outcomes? Then join the P2S Products as a Service Club, an invite-only group for business leaders who are building or running product as a service and subscription models. It's a space to share real experiences, solve challenges together, and learn from others already on this journey. No sales talk, no theory, just an open exchange and practical ideas to help you move faster. If you're interested, send me, Florian, a message to learn more. See you there.
So when we look at the consumer side for this type of product as a service model is this ability to test without committing to a purchase. That is keeps coming consistently in different touch points as the key feedback for the model. This is something they cannot get with other models, right? Or with other solutions. For instance, buy now, pay later is growing up in popularity. And that solution is only about lowering to a point the affordability barrier, the price. No, normally you can nowadays split in 3 months, something like that. But essentially you are committing to a purchase. Yeah. So if you find out that is not for you, then it will end up sitting in a drawer, or you will have to give it away or try to sell it in a secondhand platform, things like that, which again creates friction. The part about the hygiene and the credentials when it comes to repurposing this returns device is a key point. When we started the validation, 2 risky hypotheses came up. The first one was, will the consumers understand the model and let's say, follow up the intended objective, right? And specifically in terms of overdues and fraud prevention and so on, because we're giving away high value item upfront. And that has been a learning. So the short answer to the hypothesis is yes, the large majority of consumers stick to it. And then they do not fall behind in payments, to put it simply. That's positive. And of course, with the availability of new tools for monitoring and forecasting consumer purchase behavior and so on, that is, let's say, mitigated to a very acceptable level. So that risk hypothesis was validated early on in the model. Yes, it's safe. Financially is viable. Then the next part was the returns. By nature, the model allows some components to go back into a circular economy. That is the attractiveness of the proposition, whether because people's personal situations change or because they realize that it's not for them or they want to have a break or whatever. And then how can we repurpose those devices? Technically, we do have both the capabilities and the historical standing that even in the medical side, we've been refurbishing medical equipment for years. So we have very strict protocols that they started in the development phase. When we are conceiving the new products, we always think on design for sustainability. How can these devices be better equipped to be refreshed, to have an extended lifetime? Secondly, well, throughout the years, we built a reputation for delivering personal care devices that are of very good quality, and consumers are not only expecting, but they are reassured that they will receive that even in devices that have been previously used. When we started the model, and this was the second risky hypothesis, was can we recover these devices? We did a lot of research, desk research agencies, so on, and we found that initially they say no, there's a very low appetite because they are too close to your skin, to your body. People might not feel comfortable accessing a previously used device. Okay, good. Nonetheless, we tested it real life, and what we found was the opposite. That is a very good reception from this type of devices. And of course, the standing of the brand plays a big part. Yeah. Probably not the case for a third party to do it or for any other company to do it.
It's very interesting that you mentioned this, because I would have thought that hygiene, that there would be a reluctance from consumers not feeling safe with this. But it's true that I think the big difference is, as you said, if you sell it on Facebook Marketplace, eBay, whatever, from, let's say, a private person to a private person, there's no check in between. There's no trust of how has this product been used? Has it been cleaned? Is this in a good shape? And in the end, I think it comes down to trust, where you as Philips, as the trusted party, as the manufacturer of the actual product, who is better placed to refurbish it to the best state possible than the manufacturer itself. So I think, you've convinced me that this does make a lot of sense, and that basically you would get a product which is as new, pre-loved, we see sometimes for secondhand products. So no, that's very interesting. Thanks for sharing this. I'd be interested. I mean, as you know, also we work a lot with B2C, but also B2B companies, and to build a kind of bridge, let's say, between the B2C and the B2B world. And so basically what manufacturers, whether it's B2C, but also B2B, can learn from consumer subscriptions, from B2C subscriptions. So trust and reassurance in consumer health products. Trust is everything, as you've mentioned, whether it's hygiene, safety, warranty. What can B2B or industrial companies learn from how Philips built this trust with everyday consumers?
Yeah, I have to admit this is a bit of a hypothetical case because my experience has been around the B2C, and therefore I can speak up and share for that. I will not be completely sure what it is relevant for the B2B environment other than just following common sense. I think first is the systematically breaking down your idea, your hypothesis in chunks that can be tested separately, individually, at of course, the lowest cost to obtain that insight, that bit of information. Start small, start with a very concrete case study. Like I mentioned before, we have a very concrete opportunity to solve a business problem of low penetration versus the potential. And of course, we're not dealing with hundreds of thousands of different customers, but only a small selection in between. I can only think of try to find a case study where you can partner with one of these customers to test it, a little bit in the direction of venturing client or client venturing. Try to find out who and how you can bounce and test that idea until it gets refined step by step. It is a long transition, especially for established companies, probably different situation for small startups in terms of less legacy, less need to adjust to existing processes. But they start small because this is a complete transformation. So for me, those two are key points that could be transferred from one environment to the other. Find specific business applications, start small, try to test with someone. At the end, you need to start with a strong tension. What is the friction that you're trying to solve? Is it just a money thing? Is it just moving from CapEx to OpEx? Then focus only on how best to find that solution. Or is it a different dimension that you will be solving a problem in a better way because now you don't have the ownership? Or is it that you can naturally bundle services? And we experienced that a little bit when we saw we could bundle these replenishables. For instance, there are more complex ecosystems like heating, and I know you already have some insights on that. There are many players, the energy providers, you have the building management system, you have the hardware in the house, and there are new services coming in. So you can see that is not just about the CapEx and how we can reduce it, but it's about adding value by putting all these different plays together. I could think of those three topics.
Okay, thanks, Boris. I think three interesting topics. I think what strikes me the most is kind of this adding value, right? A lot of people see subscriptions as a payment plan, which I think is very wrong to believe that. It's not about dividing the purchase price into 24 or 60 months payments. So really on this, what is the added value that you could bring as a company to your customers, whether it's via a software, whether a service, or via the kind of the new business model itself, and basically transferring risk away from the consumer to the provider, right? Because the provider can better manage that risk. And so this has value to consumers, to customers. And I think this is very similar in B2C in your markets as well as in B2B. I'm sure also the teams in the Philips medical business are confronted to such transformations. The other part you mentioned, test and learn. I think this cannot be underlined enough. This, say, if I may say, this traditional manufacturing approach where, let's lock yourself up in a room for 6 to 9 months, conceptualize something, build something, develop something, over-engineer something, and then let's launch it on the market and cross fingers with the hope that it sells. I think it's very important, and I think it came through very well that you said, okay, co-conceptualize this together with your customers. So no, interesting points that you mentioned here. Thank you for that. I do have some questions on profitability, risk, circularity as well. So subscriptions, I mean, you've mentioned it, they do need to make financial sense from a provider point of view, otherwise they wouldn't be offered, right? From a financial sense for provider, but also for the consumer. So you need to find a level playing field, a win-win situation for both. So I'd be very interested to learn from what you've learned. And so why did Philips pursue subscriptions instead of one-off sales for certain products, looking at the financial aspect behind it?
Yeah, everything starts with the end consumer. That's what drives everything that happens before in the chain. And that tension has to be tangible, and people have to be prepared to do something different, change behavior, or pay more for it, because they see what they get in return is higher than the value they're paying. So that stays in any environment. We need to start from that clarity. If that part is clear, the opportunities of creating a model that is sustainable, long-term profitable and sustainable are higher. If that tension at the beginning is not entirely clear, is a little bit weak, or it cannot be solved in an efficient way, that will create tension and pressure in everything that happens after, including the financials. So in our experience, what we saw is there was a very clear, tangible tension on these elements that I mentioned is it for me? Is it safe? Will it work for me? Not enough word of mouth, peer-to-peer feedback, and that created risk. So this is one part, and is how can we reduce the risk for the consumers, but also looking at the positive, and is how can we delight those consumers, something that they're not aware yet that will make their life, their processes, their routines even better. So it's always good to look at the two things, not just on how to minimize risk, but how can we add more value? How can we surprise these customers with additional services? In our case, we found a balance, a high level, of course, without going into the details, but we found a balance where, pulled by a strong consumer tension, we step by step validated the feasibility of the model. And of course, we continue offering because there is value at the end of the chain, and that value is throughout the whole process. So yeah, it is profitable. We don't have to, let's say, internally keep prioritizing one model over the other. No, they are meant to coexist together. There are one thing that we find time and again is subscribers, they want to be subscribers. They do not want to buy. And the other way around, buyers, they want to own. They don't want to subscribe. And there is very little overlap between these two groups. And it's, from our point of view, that's great, because then we have a comprehensive portfolio to offer.
So if I get this right, there's two main drivers. On one side, you're saying that you're basically unlocking demand, so creating a new market, untapped market for you, which is not overlapping with your existing market. So it's a new market for you to sell to. And on the other side, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but margin wise also, it's a good business to be in. So offering your products as a subscription, if you compare it with the traditional model, is perhaps it's a too indiscreet questions, but is there any comment you can give on profitability of the model?
It is a viable business model. It is a viable business model from the financial point of view. One big reason for that is the strong resale value of the devices. And that makes a huge difference. Our devices, again, we have a long history of developing quality products, value for money. They last, let's say, compared to the other options, we're very competitive. They last a lot. And the resale value of our products is strong in the secondhand market, free market. Yeah. So what it means is that once we repurpose those devices, we give them, again, the same warranty that they have as a new device. We technically check that all the functionalities are there. Cosmetically, they are very strict guidelines on what to do because, as mentioned at the beginning, these are normally innovative propositions, new technology. That means that consumers are interested in these second-hand devices, and then we can monetize those returns. And that completely changes the game, that not only we're solving a consumer tension, that it is feasible, but we can repurpose and monetize these returns. And then the whole circular economy concept kicks in a very natural, organic, unforced way. So we're not pushing that we have to do circularity. No, it is happening on its own, and it is self-propelling. So for us, it was a good discovery to get to that point.
Okay, two very interesting points also. I think in the first that you mentioned is basically you're capitalizing on monetizing the quality of the long-lasting quality of your equipment, right? When you were selling something, it's great if the consumer can keep the product for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, but like you as a company, other than reputation, you probably don't get too much from this. Here in the subscription model, you actually capitalize on your superior quality towards your competitors. So I think this is a super interesting way of thinking also. The second point that you mentioned, circularity, sustainability, refurbishment, very interesting topic. What role does it play in building consumer trust and sustainability credentials? We hear a lot that sustainability is important to customers, but not necessarily the triggering decision to buy something. What is your opinion on this?
We see cultural differences across geographies. Some markets are not only open to the idea of circular economy, but proactively taking part and participating and doing conscious choices on going for devices that either they've been refurbished or they have a longer lifetime or they use less materials. And there are other markets that they're less concerned about that, and they're more focused on the actual initial purchase price and maybe a few more features, benefits, but not so much on the sustainability side. For us, it's of course part of who we are as a company. Sustainability is been in the agenda for many years. It's not something that recently popped in. We take it seriously at a company level. This experience of this journey of product as a service fits perfectly within that strategy, within that framework. And again, it's not in a forced manner that we have to make it fit there, but that naturally is growing, is contributing significantly to the overall ambitions that we have in terms of sustainability. When you look at the volumes, reduction of CO2, reuse, use less, use again, it is a very natural fit for it. But it's all linked to the key points of strong consumer attention, strong resale values, having a product that is built with good standards, that it lasts. All these things together, they play a part.
That's really good to hear. And I think this is the foundation of a successful circular model. It needs to be good from a sustainability point of view, but it needs to be good from a provider point of view and from a consumer point of view. And if you find something that ticks those 3 boxes, then you have a circular, lasting, sustainable, growing model that works at scale. And if it works at scale, then again, the circularity, the sustainability implications and impact are going to be larger. So definitely a fan of that.
That part you mentioned at scale is key.
Yeah.
When we talk about circular economy, reverse logistics, it takes a lot of effort. These complete infrastructures, processes, systems, compatibility between different logistic systems. And that's where the whole strategy pays off, because these processes in the back end have been designed with the scalability in mind. So we can take part of existing flows that allows an effective way of collecting the returns, keeping them in the warehouse until they go to the distribution center, and then from there to the reprocessing factory. And all these processes are now getting a scale that every time they make more and more environmental sense, financial sense. And these initiatives definitely are contributing to that.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning this, Boris. Makes me think of another idea, which is on the go-to-market and organizational transformation. So what you just mentioned, it works at scale, but it also involves the entire organization to be working on this, right? And so no subscription model works in a silo, right? And I think this is probably from the projects we've worked on the hardest part. It's not rocket science, but it's so many little things that need to be tweaked and twisted, and every department within your company is essentially going to be impacted in one way or another, whether it's legal, financing, reverse logistics, pricing, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm wondering, I mean, it affects distribution and the whole organization, right? So what role do retailers and omni-channel distribution play in making subscriptions work at Philips?
Key question. Our subscription model operates within what we call our consumer direct channel, which is a parallel channel to our conventional distribution chain, where we work with retailers, our customers who deliver to the end consumer. And it starts with defining what is the role of each channel. The reason why we want to have direct contact with our end consumers, it has to be clear, right? It's because we're enriching the experience, we are collecting insights, otherwise it will be more difficult to connect. At no point there is the ambition of competing, but more complementing all the channels. Nowadays, e-commerce is very dynamic, and we talk about omni-channel presence. Consumers want to be purchasing and doing their journeys in different channels, different touch points. At the end, is about us finding the right way to put these offers in front of the consumers. So the retailers, to be honest, we are not mixing our subscriptions with retailers. We're still working with them on what could be potential ways of coexist, because of course they have a significant larger share of all the traffic by nature, with a few exemptions in the consumer goods industry. But at the moment we have kept them kind of separate. And for us, subscription is also a way to elevate our consumer direct offer, something that cannot be found somewhere else by nature. We want to enrich the whole experience. And this is a way of caring for your consumers, for your end customers in the D2C channel, giving them access to the latest tools, but also taking some psychological pains and barriers away from them. So it's a slightly different mindset of having subscriptions in the consumer direct channel than consumers in retailers. Now, what I've seen in the market is that retailers are per se on their own, not necessarily exploring with this type of subscriptions, but there are very well-known third parties working along retailers. In Germany, there's a very big case with Groover. They are working together with MediaMarkt in some type of product subscription model. But there are third parties, no? With different financing and different structures.
That's what we see as well. It's retailers are usually not the ones developing the subscription model themselves. However, they're not necessarily happy when they see the manufacturer offering a subscription model directly. So there is also this kind of channel partner conflicts that I'm sure you've had conversations with retailers on this one. So I think, what you mentioned, Groover, that offers basically subscriptions for any consumer electronics, if I may say, at large, right? On a subscription model. Yeah, it's a third party involving then MediaMarkt in a certain way to offer subscriptions, but it's not MediaMarkt developing the subscription itself. So got to find a way to make it a win-win for everyone. Everyone wants to, if I may say, own the consumer, right, in a certain way. So got to make sure that this and the data behind it is being, if I may say, shared, distributed in an appropriate way. When you look at, we were talking about organizational changes. I mean, every department is being changed, right? Whether it's sales, finance, service, legal, etc. If you would have to pick one where you would say what requires the biggest change, what would you pick?
I think key component is communicating the offer clearly towards the consumer so that they know this is what you get with the standard one-off purchases. This is what you get with, let's say, installment payment at checkout. And this is what you get with product as a service. And that is part, of course, of how we advertise our goods, how we communicate, how we do our marketing. And there we need to have, to a large extent, very good understanding on what is different, how do we communicate the value, also to avoid consumers being disappointed or having too high expectations that might not be met. That's one example of a department that needs to relook at how are we talking to our consumers, how we make very crisp, clear differences between the models. Of course, because there are implications. Some people believe subscriptions are forever. Some people don't like subscriptions. Some people might react better to a different term, like rent with option to purchase. So fine-tuning how to convey that message is key. And yeah, I think from then on, everything is touched. Huge work to integrate the new business model with logistics, doing the management of the subscription and connecting it with the enterprise management system and reverse logistics, consumer care. At the end, they are the ones taking care of our consumers. And for them, is a completely different mindset. Sales department themselves, they need to understand what is the role and how is that helping them to, at the end, offer a better package of offers, better portfolio to the end consumers. It is a complete transformation internally, but also externally. What we were discussing before about how retailers interact with D2C, that is also part of this transformation. We are in new territories, uncharted waters that we haven't been there before, and we need to, following the consumer needs, adjust all the players in the ecosystem to how can we best serve that customer. It is an exciting transformation, as you probably saw yourself, happen across different industries, motivated with different reasons for different starting points, but I'm convinced that it will gain more and more traction.
That's yes, we're a big fan of that as well. But as you said, marketing and sales is a tough nut to crack. I think if you put this into perspective, whether it's finance, IT, legal, those are things, if I may say, they can be easily controlled. They might be hard from a logic point of view, from an IT point of view to kind of set up, from an engineering point of view to set up. But once they work, right? Mm-hmm. The tough part with marketing and sales, it's that it's more human-centered in the end, right? And I mean, it's a tough part, but it's the beautiful part probably as well. In this, otherwise it wouldn't be fun. But changing, responding to consumer triggers and kind of finding, okay, what is the right message to convey there, as you mentioned, these are tough things. And so I'm happy and not surprised that you mentioned this as being the toughest.
If I may say, I can imagine that every team person that has been in this transformation knows that dreaded moment when you need to approach a business process owner, a business process expert, and say, hey, we need to change how things are done around here, from here to here. When they look at it, immediately their first reaction is, why? I've been perfecting my processes, crafting them for months. They are now optimized to the maximum. Now you're telling me that returns are good. Returns are not good. We have very strict KPIs. We cannot receive more than X%. And now you're telling me that you want to receive, 200 times more our standard returns. That's no. And then you have to go through this whole crusade of explaining. This is the key, because the change happened between human beings, between people. That is the key thing to make it happen in any organization, is having the proof points and having this communication skill to communicate and say, the reason why we should disrupt all your well-crafted processes is because we found that there is value. We're unlocking this value. We have some examples from one market. We see these trends happening. And then you can feed this evidence in a small scale to all these teams to, at the end, open their minds and be willing to reconsider a lot of processes. Finance is heavily affected, game logistics, so on. I know, it's you still can see the reaction on their faces when you walk. They're like, oh no, please, no more changes. Yeah, you still need to do one more change because of this and that. And you need to develop that thick skin.
Which makes me think, how was it structured internally? Was it a top-down approach? Was it a bottom-up approach? Was the leadership super clear on we want to go towards subscriptions, and was this required? Or how did the leadership within Philips stand towards those topics?
Good question. I have been discussing this with other stakeholders in the industry. In the case of Philips, it's very closely linked to the DNA, to the innovation heritage that we have had for over 125 years. And this requires an environment where there is trust and safety, and it started very much as a local initiative from the team. Previous team members, they crafted together the proposition, and it started growing from a concrete small team outwards until evidence was being gathered and we had a strong business rationale to bring in more systems, to scale, to connect, to licenses, all this. But it started as a small initiative, of course, with the positive complicity of business leaders, that they understand the potential and they give the space for the teams to, okay, not sure if what you're doing is going to work, makes sense. Let's fence it a little bit. Go do the first validations that you need to do in the most efficient way, and let's discuss how is it going. So it was very step by step, based on trust and based on the vision, calculated risk taking of business leads to give the right amount of space at each phase. Not necessarily a top down. No? Top down came later when they saw the confirmed potential. Then it becomes part of the strategy, and it becomes part of the multi-year planning. And then you have full backing, full support from the senior leadership team. But that happens at a later stage. It's not that it starts there, gets pushed down, but more bottom up.
So what I hear is innovation and intrapreneurship, if I may say.
Absolutely. It's total entrepreneurs, or whatever they want to call it these days, is having that knowledge, that vision, and the support from the leadership teams.
Okay, that's very interesting that you mentioned, because if I put this into perspective at P2S, we work with a bit more than 35 different manufacturers on subscription transformation projects. And if I would need to bring it down to what are the success factors from organizations that succeed versus the ones that fail, and I think what you said is very, very on point, because it comes down to the habit of handling change and innovation within your organization. If you're an organization that has been not changing the way you do things over the past decades and being milking the cash cow, let's say, and just having it work without putting it into question, without questioning the way of doing things, then you're going to have a very hard time with the subscription method, I think. So what you mentioned with it needs to be in the DNA of the company to be changing from time to time how you do things at large is a critical success factor from all the projects that we've seen for success factor. So for success. So very, very interesting that you confirm this at Philips. Which brings us to another question or another topic that I have. I mean, it's super interesting discussing with you, Boris. So kind of could keep on for ages. Talking about conditions for subscription success. Yeah. So not every product fits a subscription model, right? So what are the conditions that make it work? According to you, what are key criteria a product must meet to be successful in a subscription model? What I have in mind is high price barrier. You mentioned unfamiliarity with the tech aspect, the refurbishability, I don't know if that's a word or not, but I think you got me. But also thinking about the asset lifetime versus the usage period of the product. What are, according to you, key criteria that eligibility criteria for a product to be successful with subscriptions?
Based on our experience, of course, I cannot speak for other industries. I think wherever there is a doubt about the effectiveness of the solution for your own case. For instance, coffee machine, you know how it works, the grains go on top, they get grinded, and you hear some noises, and then you have a cup of coffee cup of coffee at the end. It's very straightforward. So technology-wise, it's not a big mystery, and people know they can compare different types of coffee taste, but you know what to expect. There's no big innovation there. The moment that a completely new technology kicks in and risks disturbing that routine, that is already a good starting point to say, hey, maybe we need to first give people the opportunity to test it, to familiarize, to decide for themselves yes or no. Normally that is linked to other type of psychological concerns. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be safer? In the case of things that are touching your body, is it going to be pleasant? Is it going to be painful? Those types of doubts are prime criteria for choosing a device. Then the next one is the bundling with services. If a physical product by nature delivers a better output when combined with a service, again, case of building management system, thermostats. Yeah, you have a boiler in the house, you have a thermostat, two bits of hardware together. When you combine them and start offering all sorts of additional services like optimizing your on-off times, holidays on, holidays off, timings when the house is a different temperature, then you are delighting these customers. That when you can combine bundles of hardware with a service, prime. Price, yes, to a point, but a price alone, I will say no. There are other solutions. If it's only a matter of money, there are different solutions. From less plan and save for buying it to fintech to zero interest. And so pricing is important, but it's not the main one by any means. What else? Yes, the usage time. In theory, a short usage time versus a long asset lifetime can help in some industries, depending on the logistics, right? Because it's not convenient to keep sending fridges on and paying for a company to carry them 3 floors up and down. That just gonna bring the cost. So if you're doing it for a period of 6-9 months, yeah, that's not gonna fly. That's gonna definitely not be a viable business proposition. But when you look at small devices that can be, say, easily refurb, easily put in a box and transported here and there, that also has a high element of eligibility for subscriptions. Modularity. In our case, we have fantastic range of modern childcare products. One of them is a breast pump. Very, very intimate product, very touching your skin. And we are offering in subscriptions with good results because the way in which has been designed allows for changing the key components that are in contact with the skin, those that are carrying liquids, hoses, all that is completely replaced with brand new replacement parts, and that also helps the case for a good business logic for subscriptions. Baby monitoring, in fact, baby stuff, right? There are lots of new companies specializing in renting baby stuff. The push chairs, the car seats, baby monitors, because by nature, every 8, 12, 18 months later, you need to keep changing for another one, for another one. So that part, of course, bicycles, yourself per hand. Yeah, I think it depends. It's exciting to see what's coming up, but every time is more and more and more. I think even things like wearables, they're coming up, your hands, smart glasses, all that sort of thing. Prime, really prime. If you have the modularity sorted, fantastic for subscription type of model.
Okay, super interesting. So if I summarize this, novelty you mentioned is a very important. So a new product, bundling and optimizing with services and software. I'm going to say usage period compared to the asset lifetime, modularity, and what I heard also a bit in between the line is what you mentioned earlier is residual value. So it needs to be relatively high, otherwise you cannot reuse it for another consumer, right?
Residual value along with the logistics, right? I mean, you need to look at what are your cost drivers. Again, in the case of white goods, very strong cost driver is installing them and pick them up from the end consumer. And that has to be taken into consideration. But yeah, I agree with those 5 points.
Okay, good. We're nearing the end, Boris, unfortunately. I'd be very interested to do a quick round of rapid fire up takeaway questions for you. So just whatever comes to your mind, just shout. One KPI that is the most important in consumer subscriptions.
It has to be subscriber satisfaction.
Subscriber satisfaction.
It's 1 to 5, happy faces, total freedom on it. But you need to constantly monitor how satisfied are they, because that will reflect in churn. Churn will reflect in lifetime value. And then we move on to the hard financial KPIs. But for me, everything derives from the consumer satisfaction. Are they happy with the subscription, yes or no?
the subscriber net promoter score. This is the North Star value that hangs above your bed that you look at every morning.
Correct.
Good. Okay. Last question for you, Boris. I'd be very curious to hear what you think is the next big product category for subscriptions.
It's already happening, right? Mobility is already a reality. I think because I previously worked in the building industry for some time, and we're talking about some industries being more open to adopting change faster than others. I think construction industry is very conservative, has been conservative so far. And I think there are very good opportunities to start moving in the direction of subscriptions completely. Concept of buying a boiler and paying someone to maintain it, and then paying for the fuel, and then connecting it to a thermos. That's just an outdated concept. The people want a comfortable temperature with fresh air.
Yep.
What happens behind that should not be the business of the end consumer. So that is a prime opportunity to combine hardware with services, to keep updating because things change all the time, to be part of an ecosystem where you have the energy providers, you have the providers of the hardware. That to me, I think will be a very good case to watch over the coming years.
Okay, super interesting. It's something we see a lot rising. If I look at within our 35 companies that we partner with, half are about energy efficiency in one way or another. Cooling, ventilation system, batteries, chargers, heating systems, grid stabilizers. These are super good candidates for as a service models.
Absolutely. I don't see either at an organizational level or even at the end consumer level going through the process of, paying thousands for heat pumps, PV panels. That's about to change. That has to change.
Yeah. No, definitely. And some very interesting startups, scale-ups also in that space. German company 1,5 Grad, which is very, very strong. Perhaps one last comment on this one. One trend that we see is whether it's manufacturers or distributors that are purchasing more and more service companies again. So there was the trend before of separating yourself from the service network basically out there. We hear a lot that big manufacturers are purchasing maintenance service companies again, because those are super important also in subscription models. In the end, you need to get a hand on remote monitoring. It is necessary, definitely, but you need to put a hand on the actual machine from time to time.
We already experienced it in Philips. Strong push towards connectivity with the clear aim of improving the value that we deliver to consumers. But that implies getting the data, getting the sensors, interpreting that data. Fully agree.
Super interesting. Boris, this has been a real pleasure. I think we planned on doing this at least 20 minutes shorter, but I think it has been very, very good talking to you, listening to you, sharing the journey of Philips on subscriptions, on consumer behavior. And I think one message is very, very clear, is that it's all about how to generate more value for consumers. It's definitely not about just dividing the price. It's really about, okay, what are other value drivers that you can bring to your customers, and subscription is an enabler, is the model that makes sense in order to get there. So thank you very much, Boris. I have one last question. How can people reach out to you?
Good question. Yeah, we're interested in everything that helps evolving these models, making them more mainstream, exchanging good practices, and so on. I think within the podcast, probably there will be some sort of comment section, something like that. But in my commercial email with Philips, I can be reached. So it's my name, Boris, my surname, .romero@philips.com. Happy to be contacted and connect about opportunities for growing, learning more, exchanging experiences. It's an exciting topic. It is happening. It will become more mainstream. So yeah, I'm definitely passionate about everything that is going in this industry. And really happy to connect with you. Thank you, Andre, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to share our perspective, our views. I've seen every time there is more and more traction, and these type of initiatives definitely help companies to be very informed, to make better decisions, to connect. So happy to be connected and like-minded companies, people who want to carry on growing this space of circularity and products as a service.
That's very good to hear. I do have to make a last comment since you kind of positioned this so nicely. We have launched at P2S what we call the product as a service club. And the club, what is the idea, is a closed door club where leaders like you, so all the listeners out there interested in subscription models and that are actively working on subscription models or thinking about working on subscription models within their organization. It's basically we organize roundtables, discussion sessions, one-on-one sessions where we talk about all the issues, all the trends that you have faced, that you are facing regarding your subscription transformation. So to safe space to share and to discuss amongst peers. The product as a service club. But yeah, just as a short side note. So Boris, thank you very, very much for the conversation today, and wishing you and Philips all the best of success for a subscribed future.
Thank you very much again, Andre, and we'll keep in contact.
Thank you.